Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Country Boy Conversation. We have a special guest tonight, Mr. Dennis Carroll, and his new show will be on YouTube. Shoot. hunting the shadows, right, Dennis? Hunting the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about something different tonight. I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be talked about, the Nazis and the occult, because how is that saying, Dennis? If we forget our past, I can't remember it exactly the right
way. I hear you. Let's see. It's been a while. It's been a long time. Yes, sir. So what's our topic tonight? It's going to be now Nazis. Oh yeah, the Nazis.
Nazis and the occult. Yeah, I found it very fascinating. Wow, I couldn't believe it. I started reading up on it, Dennis, a little bit, so I had a little bit of knowledge.
Well, I've been in paranormal research for a long time now, 55 plus years or so. I'm not going to say how old I am. I started when I was in diapers, actually. But anyway, not really, but anyway, I say that. I found some very interesting subjects. And one of the interesting subjects that is connected to the occult, which is another one of my favorite subjects to get on, the occult, is definitely Hitler and the Nazis. These guys were into some, of course, as we know by history, the Nazis were in some very deep, dark stuff. Not just Auschwitz and these other places and these concentration camps and the killing of the Jewish people, the millions of them. I'll tell you somebody right now who was even worse than Hitler. A lot of people say, oh, what are you talking about? Who's worse than Hitler? And that was Stalin. Stalin killed far more people than Hitler ever did, by the way. But I'm not cutting Hitler a break either. I'm not going to cut him a break.
Right.
But you had some deadly men in history back then. But here's the interesting thing about Adolf Hitler, and I've studied him a lot because he's so malevolently evil in many aspects. He was an egomaniac, okay? And he thought that he knew best to lead his own armies. We would probably be speaking German right now, Chris, if he had turned his armies over to the real generals. But he didn't do that. He kept fiddling around. He thought he was a genius and all this stuff. He thought he could do whatever he wanted to. So he really ended up being his own worst enemy. But that's the way evil does, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Evil, and I've said this many times before, evil is inherently self-destructive, okay, in that respect. It is inherently self-destructive in its own self and taking you with it if it possibly can. That's just the way it works,
Right.
Like a terrorist bomb doesn't care who it kills when it goes off.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the thing about Adolf Hitler, not only was he an egomaniac and a narcissist, he thought he was the center of the universe. He thought, he was the top guy for everything. He had something else about him, though, Chris, that you don't hear a lot of people talk about. He had, I think, a supernatural aura around him. People that heard him talk said he had almost a supernatural power, that he could convince people of things and get people on his side. He could touch people in a different way than other speakers could do that make speeches and stuff. He had almost a supernatural power, and I believe he did to a certain extent to get these people in the position he got them in, to lead them and again to work them the way he did. To me, I believe he hooked up with his real father, who was probably Lucifer, Satan, or whatever name you want to call him. I think that was his real father, and that's where he got his power, his base power. If you go in the kitchen right now and you want to plug in your toaster, you plug it in the wall to get what? Power. It ain't going to work unless it's got power to it, okay?
Right.
Like the way these people do, Chris, with the demonic and all that stuff. They plug into that demonic power to get the things they want. And I'm sure without a doubt, Hitler and most of his top elite Nazis were hooked into this power. Martin Bormann and a lot of them were actually pedophiles. You never hear that much about it. Some of them were pedophiles. And for all we know, probably without doubt, they sacrificed children in some of these dark rituals. You can go to some of their castles and strongholds to this day. You go down in the basement and you'll see these pentagrams and these markings, these magical markings on the walls and the floors. What were they up to? Hitler was obsessed with the occult, the supernatural and the occult. He sent his people all over the world to try to find supernatural artifacts. We know that if you've ever watched Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So that was what he was fascinated. He was also fascinated with the horoscopes. Now, I'm going to tell you where all this stuff actually began, okay? Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the Vril?
Yes, yeah.
That familiar?
Yeah.
The Vril was a actual supernatural society that operated in Germany. And the Vril started, it's very much the interesting thing about the Hellboy movie. I'll get to that later. Anyway, the interesting thing about the Vril, it was a supernatural spiritualist type society that met I think it originally began in like the 1880s or somewhere in there. It all began because a guy wrote a book about an underground kingdom. Okay, this is going to get wild here. We're getting into stuff here now.
You're telling me stuff I didn't even know.
This guy wrote it about, he wrote about an underground kingdom, and he was actually supposedly a prisoner there. Now, they had a power. Okay, they had a power supposedly of the mind. They could control things and all that, very heightened super type of a psychic abilities about them. And they also could power their vehicles and stuff with this power. And the name of this power was the Vril. I spelled V-R-I-L. Vril. And he wrote a book about this. And some women got to reading this, and it's probably a book circle or something, get a little book club, and they got to reading this. And they got deeper into it. And really made a spiritual movement out of this, a spiritualist movement. And so there began the teachings of the Vril, the ladies, and there were some beautiful German women involved in this, who began the Vril. And here's what they said, Chris. This is going to get wacky now, okay? Mm-hmm. They said that they got in touch with alien influences, spiritual alien influences, okay? Yeah. And they said that these spirits that they were talking to were off-world aliens that were connected to the real Vril society that lived underground on this planet, supposedly. Anyway, make a long story short, they believe that they got power and knowledge from these alien entities that they contacted in seances and all these other things they were doing. Well, here's the interesting thing, Chris. Some of these ladies were married to high-ranking German officers.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Some of them were married and connected. I think one of them were a brother and sister. There was some of them connected family-wise to the Nazi regime. This was something I think Hitler, although he didn't really believe in anything but himself, okay? He even Hitler one time claimed I'm a good Catholic, you know. But Hitler didn't believe in anything but himself. Although he may have believed in outside powers. I don't know. I'm not going to say he's an atheist, but he may have believed in outside powers, but he thought he was a power too. You know, that's just the way he looked at it. Yeah. Anyway, he probably said, hey, I can use this, you know, because the way to get people, listen to this, Chris, the way to get people to truly believe and follow you is to reach them intelligently wise, but also spiritually wise. You appeal to a man's sense of religion and spirituality, then you really got a good hold on that person. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then if you approach them intellectually using this, That is the way you brainwash people, the way you get people under your influence. And that was what Hitler, he was really smart about doing this kind of stuff. Okay. That's what Hitler really did. But I think also behind the man called Hitler was this, I think, perhaps supernatural power. Now, I do have no evidence that he actually ever sold his soul to the devil or that he actually did all that. I have no evidence on that. Nobody else does. But that we have supposedly thought through history that he had his own core beliefs, and they were centered around things that were definitely supernatural in that respect, because he was real big on horoscopes and stuff. So he was always talking about this outside influence on him, see. And he had to definitely hook up with a demonic doing that, in that respect, because he was a very spiritualist person in that aspect. Although, like I said, he didn't believe in only anything really in the end but his true self.
Right.
But and so this was a tool that Hitler could use. Said, hey, I can get them by their religion, by their religious beliefs or their spiritual beliefs. I've got them where I want them. And so they had their own little secret for real society, like the head of real society going on. But it even went beyond the real, and it became a weird, unnamed kind of a natural kind of belief system and it was all centered around eventually Hitler himself.
Yeah.
And his men believed in Hitler, like Bormann and some of the rest of them. They all believed in him. And it was almost as if they were under a supernatural influence to a certain degree in that respect. How can you really cloud people's minds to get them to believe and go along with you on things like that if you don't have some kind of power, not just a mesmerizing human power, but there may be something else behind this too,
Do you think
anyway, that was a big influence they had, that was a big influence that was over them,
Yeah. Do you think he could have been telepathic or something, or like what would it be, telekinesis, where he could control these people's minds, like mind control kind of?
Well, it was almost telepathic in a way. The way he talked, and I've watched some of his speeches. Of course, it's hard to follow. I mean, they're in German. I don't know German. But I've seen some that were translated. And he had a sort of, it wasn't what he was saying that much. It's just his presence. And that's why I say it was like that supernatural aura around him. You've seen people that radiate power like that sometimes, and it can be a good feeling and it can be a bad feeling too sometimes. I think if we were in the room with this man, we would probably pick it up on a bad aura, definitely. But to watch him and his movements and his inflection and the way he done it, here's what he appealed to. Okay, he was an egomaniac. He used his appeal to other people's egos. Okay, and so what he was feeding these people, you're better than everybody else. You're a better set apart kind of people. You should be proud of yourself and your heritage. Because we are the master race. We are better than everybody else. So what he did, Chris, is what you see going on in the world around you today. He divided his people, into them and us. Okay? It's us against them. And that's the way he played that little game. And it was a very psychological type game. And it appealed to these people's ego, making them feel better. He was stroking their egos, making them feel good. But he was using them that way, see?
Yeah.
To get their minds and get that influence on them. That's what he was basically doing.
Yeah, we got a comment here. I don't know, AZIC9. I read something about a ET race known as the Arbons. I've
heard of that. The Arbons. The Arbons might have been connected with the Vril. Okay, that was because they mentioned alien races that they supposedly contacted. Now, here's another interesting aspect of all this. I'm getting into the science fiction part again. that a lot of their ideas for missiles, rockets, and all this stuff supposedly came from these alien sources.
Yeah, I heard
Uh,
that. I read it.
yeah, the scientists hooked into this real stuff as well, and that is supposed to be where the Nazi flying bell, the flying saucer looking, the bell looking thing. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of that. Um, Supposedly, yeah, it supposedly was anti gravity type of a machine. That and a lot of people speculate that's what actually crashed that night in Kicksburg, Pennsylvania, in a very
Okay,
interesting
yeah,
incident. Yeah, because it
yeah,
looked like they said they saw it on a flatbed. It was being taken off, and it had a bell shape like to it.
yeah.
But here's the interesting thing, and we're going to get into this in a little while. That there
Hmm.
was supposed to have been a Nazi military base in the Antarctic, and that was how they got to that base was flying these bales, these ships. They had these anti gravity ships they could go to the Arctic with, and that was supposed to be a secret base down there.
Hmm.
Now I'm just saying, suppose I have no hard evidence on that, but I've heard a lot of conjecture on it. Definitely that there may have been something like that hidden down there, and it may still be there. Some say that the
Right.
third rank may rise again one day as the fourth rank and take over. But that was supposed to be Hitler's grand master plan. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But anyway, that's tied in to a lot of the real stuff. Okay, but now they took this ball and ran with it. They Nazified it, though. Okay, it wasn't just
Mhm.
spiritualist anymore. It wasn't some lady sitting around a circle having a séance. They took it and ran with the ball. They Nazified it like they did everything else. They weaponized it. And
Uh-huh.
we've often talked about the super soldier project that Hitler was working on. He was just like it. And you got one thing that the governments of the world had in common with the Nazi regime. They weaponize everything. Everything they get a hold of, that's the first thing you think, hey, what kind of a weapon can we make out of this,
Yeah, right.
That's Operation Paperclip. I'm going to talk about that in a minute.
Hmm.
Anyway, they weaponize everything. Of course, that's the way it works. And that was definitely what Operation Paperclip was. We went in and got those scientists, or they never would have been an atom bomb. Okay, we never would have went to the moon probably
Right.
without the scientists that we went and got with Operation Paperclip. So the interesting thing is, we stole Nazi technology and used it
Right.
for our own benefit. But yeah, here's the bad thing about it, Chris, and this has always struck me as bad. We got where we got even today off of the remnants of the Nazis. That's not good, really. It's sort of like taking
Yeah.
blood money, isn't it? It's not, to me, it doesn't sound good, but that's the way governments work. Okay. That's just the
Right.
way they work,
Right.
especially when it comes to secrets. But I think there's a movie coming out very soon. Oppenheimer, I think is the name of it. Oppenheimer
Yeah,
is
I've been seeing that.
about
Yeah.
them building the atomic bomb and all that. But Operation Paperclip, that's what that was about, definitely. But the Super Soldier Project was one of Joseph Mengele, the doctor Joseph Mengele, was working
Uh-huh.
on for Hitler. And he was fascinated with twins. Now, listen to this. This is very interesting. There is a strange bond between twins,
Yes,
whether
there
they're
is.
fraternal or paternal, whatever the case. Um, or identical twins. I knew a case where there were two twins. One of them worked where I worked at the hospital, and her sister one day, one Christmas, they bought each other gifts. She lived in California, and the one lived here where I live. They sent each
Uh-huh.
other gifts for Christmas. They opened them up, and they were the same exact sweater,
Oh,
same color.
wow. That's
That's
creepy.
the way. There's that connection with twins. Okay.
Yeah.
And Mila was very interested in this. And I'll tell you why, okay? It wasn't just the fact that they were twins and they look alike, but they thought alike. And he was fascinated by that connection that, you could have two different entities that were really one.
Right.
And this was part of his outlook on the super soldier project. If you could take and breed or make someone like that with heightened intellect that could think and all that stuff, this was a super soldier, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
if you could also go a step further with experimentation and say that, hey, we can make them super where they won't feel pain, they won't feel hunger, they won't feel. Let me tell you something interesting. Toward the end of World War II,
Mm-hmm.
most German soldiers were hopped up on barbiturates.
Oh, really?
That
I
was
didn't
all
know
part of the Nazi plan to give them this dope, this drug, to
that.
make
Mm-hmm.
them super soldiers, so they wouldn't feel pain. They could keep going. They wouldn't need sleep. They could be almost superhuman on these
Right?
barbiturates. But let me tell you one more thing that's going to surprise you. We were doing the same thing with U.S. soldiers.
Don't surprise me any. I mean,
We were
really.
giving them barbiturates too. Okay. And by the way, they say that the war in Vietnam was fought mostly on cases of beer and marijuana.
Seriously?
That's what went on in Vietnam a lot. That
Huh?
happens with soldiers in war. You've got to give them that kind of edge sometimes. I know it's
Yeah.
bad and it makes alcoholics out of them. It
Yeah.
destroys their life. But hey, you don't care if you're sending these guys out as cannon fodder. It don't matter what you do to them; they're gonna get killed anyway, or whatever the case. You don't worry about it.
Right.
That's just the way generals like Hitler and all the rest of them did things. Um, but that's a bad way to think about it. They were out there fighting on these barbiturates, staying awake, less pain, less cold and hunger. They were almost super soldiers to that extent. But we also
Mm-hmm.
had our own super soldiers. So there you go.
Right. Right. I didn't know that.
And like that Flesh says, yes, we have all been used by guinea pigs since day one, definitely. It probably began the Revolutionary War.
Right.
But
Yeah. It wouldn't
it
surprise
wouldn't
me.
surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. But a lot of this stuff, people never realize it. You don't read this in the history books, okay?
No.
But it happened. It's documented. It really did happen. And there was one division of Nazi soldiers that were left to actually try to defend what was left of Berlin in the last closing days of the war. And they were a vicious bunch of guys. Guess what their name was? They were called the Werewolves,
Oh, wow.
the Wehrmacht. And they were sent in as sort of like harassing forces to harass our soldiers and the Russians and the French and all that. They were set back as sort of strategic fighters to hide in the shadows and come after us that way. But a lot of them finally just gave up. They just said they quit, and that was the end of it all. They finally
Mm-hmm.
gave up because they were facing astronomical odds. But
Right.
Hitler had that set up. And I want to tell you one thing about Hitler. I can say this without a doubt. I do not believe he died in that bunker. He
Mm-hmm.
was too much of an egomaniac to go out that way. He had a lot of doubles that he used. I believe that man had plans. Knowing him and the meticulous plans that he made, although towards the end of the war, he was really beginning to lose a grip on reality, they say.
Right. Right.
But I believe he had plans, and I believe they had plans to get him out of the country.
Right. Right.
In the
Makes
end.
sense to me.
Because
Yeah.
here's the interesting thing, Chris. Here's the interesting thing. There were a whole bunch of high-ranking Nazis that got away.
Right. Right.
Okay, Bormann and then some of these other ones were captured, but some of the Mengele got away, died in
Mm-hmm.
South America. Okay, and if you go to South America today, there are some strange ruins of military complexes down there. They're not supposed to be there, especially towards the southern tip of South America, which is close to what? Not that far of a jump from the Antarctic. Okay.
Yeah.
What are those installations for? A lot of the countries don't even know the history on these, but they have the earmarks of German Nazi construction.
Right.
What was going on in Argentina and all these places? Definitely. They had plans. They didn't just, say, oh, we gotta run for it and that was it. They already had contingency plans set up for a lot
Right.
of this stuff. And a lot of them left through Odessa. You've ever heard of that book, The Odessa Project? That was where a
It's
lot of them deported from through Odessa. You hear about Odessa today. That's in the Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had plans, and they did away. A lot of them got away, and some of them were never found. Joseph Mengele was one of them until he actually died. They knew about it. So they called him the Angel of Death, by the way. He killed a lot of people with his weird, strange hybrid experiments. He wanted to actually, for a long time, try to hybrid humans with animals.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Fresh said
that would be the search of the super soldier. If you could like have half man, half gorilla or something, you could have a soldier that would be undefeatable. Very much like the werewolf that we've talked about earlier. It has the body of the beast, but the mind of a man. What a great soldier that would make. Think about it.
Yeah, I was reading I think it was I don't know if I was watching a YouTube channel or reading about it. That Hitler, they somehow they cloned babies out of him, and there's supposed to be like 9 babies that they had that was all supposed down in Brazil. I don't know how true that is. I just read it or watched it on something.
Well, yeah, that was what Mengele was working on a lot, with a lot of children, unfortunately, and a lot of babies and stuff. They may have laid, for all we know, and I've heard some interesting things about this, they may have laid the actual groundwork. I don't think they got into it, but they may have laid the actual groundwork of cloning to that extent. Yeah. I'm presently writing a book, and it's called The God Game. And I've talked about this before, but that is still ongoing in this world today. Hitler was playing a God game, so were the Nazis with him. The God game is still being played on a much higher level now than ever before. We still have in this world, and I hate to say this, but it's very true, the spirit and the influence of the Nazis still exist, big time. It's in a lot of our modern day society, whether we realize it or not. And what it is, if you go back and you want to trace it straight back to its origin, the Nazis personified the Antichrist, the spirit of the Antichrist. Hitler was a Antichrist, by the way, but he was not the Antichrist. He was a Antichrist. He was a prototype of what was to come eventually one day. There have been several of them in history. Caesar was one. Napoleon probably was. Hitler definitely was. Alexander the Great may have been one too. They were sort of the prototypes, the shadows of the real Antichrist that is supposed to come. And you still have that spirit in the world today, Chris. It's still operating big time in the background, especially, but it's there. And it's causing a lot of our problems today. And that's why I call it the God game. And here's why I call it the God game. I'll lay this out for you. Just like what Hitler was looking for through Mengele and some other things too. You can have all the power in the world, all the money and prestige, but one day you've got to die and leave it. But what? What if that money and power could buy you immortality? Right. You would never have to die, okay? That would definitely be something Hitler would be interested in, okay? It's one thing to think you're a god, but it's another thing to become one, almost, to become immortal. Gods are the only ones that are immortal, okay? And if that's the game you're playing the God game. And look at what's going on around us today. Look at what's going on with AI and all this robotics and everything that's coming out. Oh, yeah. Think about this, Chris. If you had tons of money, all the power you wanted, if you could buy a perfect robotic body and have AI download your mind into that robot, Chris would live forever. There's a part where you just replace it. You would live forever. But here's an interesting thought. What about your soul? Would you still have a soul? Would you still have a soul, That's an interesting thing about it. And when you look at people like Hitler, you have to answer that question. Where was his soul? Where did this man have a soul? Did he have any bit of it left? You know, he
Right.
was so dark and so caught up in his own self. But you know, that is the way true evil works, Chris. It
Mm-hmm.
wants to turn you inward upon yourself so that you can't worship God, you can't worship anything, you can't love anything, you can't feel for anything but yourself. That's a bad situation, and I've seen people like that. I know you probably have too. I've met people like that, and I'm going to tell you, my friend, those are the most dangerous creatures walking on this earth.
Right.
Okay? Because they will kill you in a heartbeat and never think twice about it if you get in their way from what they want, because they have become their own gods.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what Hitler was. Hitler was his own god. Stalin was his own god. You know, they were buddies at the beginning of war. You don't ever hear that much about that. They were good friends, but then they turned against each other. That's why Hitler hated the Russians so much. And the Russians hated him. Stalin and Hitler ended up hating each other. They were good buddies to begin with. Why? Because that's like two big boys on the block. Sooner or later, they're going to fight. They're going to meet up, and there's going to be a power thing going on. And that's what it was all about, power. And that's why they say if Hitler did kill himself, which I don't think he did, I think he's double by now. He did not want to ever fall into the hands of Stalin alive.
Mm-hmm.
I read a story one time years ago where Stalin supposedly actually captured Hitler. And Stalin was talking about it, and he walked into the basement, and he had somebody with him, and he said, "This is my prized possession," and there hanging in a cage from the ceiling was what remained of Hitler. He was completely insane. But that was Stalin's prized possession. That's how much he definitely would hated Hitler, and Hitler hated him. But that was one of the reasons why he supposedly did himself in. But I think he got away. I think more or less he had a contingency plan in place and did that. But here's the interesting thing, okay? If the spirit of this Antichrist that I'm talking about, and it does still exist in this world, that means that one day the Third Reich will rise again, my friend. It will rise again, but it won't be the Third Reich this time. It'll probably be the Fourth Reich. And this will be under the auspices of the true, real Antichrist. He'll be the one that comes to power all this. But he will have that power thanks to the Nazis, thanks to all the things that they've done and the things that happened in World War II, the super soldier, paper clip, all of it. Operation High Jump is probably in there. All of this accumulates into this opposition that this may happen again, definitely. I see that happening. Although he won't be Hitler this time. We don't know who he'll be. Right. But I believe he's alive in the world today, and I believe he's waiting for his chance. But meanwhile, the little Antichrist, the little ones in Hollywood and these other places, they're still playing the God game. They want that immortality. They would love to do it, cloning, organ harvesting, whatever the case may be. But the sure way to do it would be an immortal body. It would never break, and if it breaks down, you can fix it. But you can have your intellect in that robot, in that android, whatever name you want to give him, that image of you, okay? Now think about what the Bible says in the book of Revelation. It talks about the false prophet, okay? This is what he says. And he shall cause them to worship the image of the beast. You hear that? The image of the beast. Well, what is mankind made in the image of, Chris? God.
Yeah, God, yeah.
Satan is a counterfeit of everything God has. Satan is going to make something in his image.
Exactly.
It's going to be the image of the Antichrist. And what better image would that be than an AI-generated android or something like that, you know? Here's the good thing. Here's the thing about it. And I've had people say, "Oh, why are you so down on AI?" Well, you know, it's a wonderful thing. Yes, it is a wonderful thing. It may cause paralyzed people to walk again, deaf people to hear, blind people to see. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm all for that. Don't think I'm not. But do you really believe it's going to be used for that? You really think in the end they will use that? Think about what if Hitler had AI. He didn't need it though. He had that supernatural power about him, I think. But
Yeah,
what if
yeah.
he had something like that? You know what? Here's the thing. Here's the thing. It should make people feel awful nervous when they lay down and go to bed at night. The
Mm-hmm.
Chinese have AI, and so do the Russians, and probably the North Koreans, along with the Iranians, okay, and some other
Mm-hmm.
bad actors out there. Don't think they don't have it, okay? And here's one more thing to think about. AI has already, my friend, been infected by the demonic. Why? Because you have the human factor involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we make as human beings will never be perfect because we're not perfect. We can only make imperfection can only make imperfection. I'm sorry to say,
Mm-hmm.
perfection, and that's God, the real true God of this universe, is perfect. He can make perfection, but we can't. Okay,
Right.
and anything that we do has that ability to be taken by these demonic forces and used for other things. And I've seen it done. I've seen it happen in front of my eyes, and I know this without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. You're always at war. There is no peace. There's never been any peace in this world since the Prince of Peace left it. And didn't wasn't any peace then either when he was alive.
Right.
Definitely not.
Right.
There'll never be any peace here until the end. Until one day true order in this world is restored.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, the gods of this world, the false gods of this world,
Right.
they're in control, just like the Nazis were in Germany. They're in control. You know, I'll tell you something. I'm all for the Second Amendment, okay? And that was the very first thing Hitler did. I was reading about this the other day. The very first thing he did when he took control in Germany, he took everybody's guns. And you know, he said something very interesting. I will give them guns when I want them to have guns.
Right. Right.
So there you go. And the enemies of this country, whatever political name you want to give them, are the enemy. And I took an oath once to uphold the Constitution of this country, and I still hold
Mm-hmm.
to it. But the enemies of this country are the enemies of our Constitution, okay? Because they are the enemies of your rights. And these enemies are enemies of truth and light. And the only way to defeat them is with truth and light. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only way Hitler could have been defeated because we had a better purpose, but we kind of failed in our thing afterwards with it because we did some things that weren't right either. But that's man, you know. Man
Right. Right.
is inherently that way, you know. That doesn't surprise me.
Right.
Because, well, like I said, what I said earlier, we're imperfect beings. That's the way it goes. We used to have a saying where I worked. I worked in a print shop one time for many years. We used to say trash in, trash out. You can't get nothing else out of trash but trash, and that's the way that works. Well,
Right.
that's the way it goes with mankind. You can't get anything out of perfection but imperfection. That's it. That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Back to the what was I've heard a lot about Hitler having a big interest in what was going in the Tibetan with the Tibetan monks. Like he was really into it. Like he was sending people there looking for something they had. Shambhala, I think is what it was called. Looking for a place.
Well, the Tibetan monks have been known to be very good at mind control. See,
Uh huh.
matter of fact, I don't know if you're familiar with John Keel, the very famous
Okay.
John Keel. He wrote a book. I would advise anybody to read it. It's called Jadoo, which is, I think, Indian Hindu for magic. And he
Uh
went
huh.
over there in Indonesia and in India and parts of China and Tibet and studied a lot of this stuff. Matter of fact, he actually almost went face to face with the Yeti one time. You go to read
Wow.
this book; it's very interesting. Jadoo. Anyway, that's spelled Jaadoo, I think. But anyway, John Keel was a modern day Indiana Jones too, in a way. He did some wild, freaky stuff. Well, he
Mm-hmm.
actually went to the Tibetan monks and visited them. He went to Tibet, and when he got there, this head monk come out and said, "Hello, John. We've been waiting for you."
Whoa, that's creepy.
And this really got him because this was in the days there was no telephones around there.
Right, right,
You had
right.
radios, but they didn't have anything like that in Tibet.
Yeah.
No way to know this. And he says, "How do you know who I am?" And the monk said, "We saw you coming from a long ways off, from many, many, many miles away. We know you
Wow.
were coming to ask us some questions and some things you want us to tell you." Freaky stuff, because these guys sit in those cold, dark rooms in Tibet, and they channel their minds. They have gotten mind control down to a perfected art. Okay,
Wow.
they can do things with their mind. They can stop their hearts, Chris.
Wow.
And he said they can stop their heart, and you can't even feel their pulse. Okay,
Wow.
they can lower their breathing. They buried one Tibetan monk for like several weeks and dug him up, and he was still alive. I mean, he could
Oh my
control
God.
his breathing and his body function for weeks underground that would have killed anybody else. Uh,
Wow.
they do some wild stuff. No wonder Hitler was interested in that. Oh, if he could have harnessed something like that. You see, he was a megalomaniac. He wanted power, more and more and more power. Power is like a dark drug. The more you get it, the more you want. Ask anybody in Hollywood and places like that, and in Washington, D.C. The more power you get, the more you want, and you'll do anything or make a deal with anybody to get that power, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
That's what it
That's.
all comes down to, the power and immortality. That's the God game.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Hey, David.
How you doing, Nick?
Yeah. Uh, it's this is really fascinating. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, it's just he wanted the what
Yeah.
the sword of destiny. He wanted the holy grail, right? And he wanted like every religious artifact he could get his hands on, didn't he?
The Spear of Destiny is a very interesting item. There are about like a half a dozen Spears of Destiny in the world, okay? We
Yeah,
don't know which
right,
one's the real one.
right, right.
One of them may be the real one. Yeah, one of them. There's one in Habsburg, Germany, actually, that he supposedly got a hold of, and it's still there in a museum. I've seen pictures of it. It looks like it might possibly be, but there again, there's so many religious fakes in the world. It's hard to
Mm-hmm.
tell. But if you could have supposedly the Spear of Destiny, you would be unstoppable. Nobody could conquer you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power of the Spear of Destiny. Now, of course, the Spear of Destiny is the spear with which they pierced the side of Christ on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Longinus was the name of supposedly the centurion who came along and stuck Christ in the side. He was already dead, and nothing but blood and water came out. But it's supposed, according to legend, Longinus had a blind eye, and some of
Yeah,
Christ's blood and water got in his eye and healed it, and he was able to see again. So he broke the spear and used the staff part of it as a staff, the shank of it, for the rest of his life, and became a disciple of Christ. And the spear supposedly was saved. I don't think it was probably, but there again, that's the
yeah,
legend.
yeah,
Hitler was fascinated by this stuff. But like I say, it was all about power. That's what he wanted, more and more power. And they said that whoever carried, and I think Charlemagne, the very famous King Charlemagne,
mm-hmm.
supposedly carried this in the battle and was never defeated as long as he had this Spear of
That,
Destiny. Yeah,
wow.
that's part of the legend. Yeah, that's part of the legend of it. And that's one of the reasons why Hitler wanted it, so badly. It was all about power, you know. Um, like I said, he was a megalomaniac, an egotistical maniac, and he thought that he should be the ruler of the world and the master race. That's why he wanted to turn the German people against the Jewish people. You had to have an enemy, and they were just convenient. There were a lot of them. They were convenient.
Right.
He didn't like them anyway. He was
Right.
prejudiced against them. And that was a convenient thing why he wanted to turn it against a certain people. Like I said, he had that mentality, it's us against them. And that's the way he ran that score, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, that is still being done today on a larger scale than Hitler did it. They are still trying to divide us
Oh
into
yeah.
sections, you know, and that's what Hitler did. He divided you're a gypsy or you're a Jew or you're homosexual or whatever the case. He puts you in all these little categories. Why? Because it is much easier to conquer a divided enemy than it is one united. And
Right.
that's still going on today. That's why the enemies in this world, in this country, want to divide us and turn us against each other and have us at each other's throats because that is the way they can truly control us. You
Yeah,
know,
for
it's all
sure.
about the power.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
that's
it's
true, that flesh, you know, and he used a lot of, and he even used the Catholic religion in that way. Oh, we are God's people. God wants us to do this kind of a thing. God actually had nothing to do with that. Okay. God
hmm
probably gets mad about stuff like that. I wouldn't blame him a bit. You don't use my name for something you want to do, you know. That's been done a lot down through history. Look at the Crusades and all that stuff, you know, and the Knights
yeah.
Templar were good at it as well. Um, by the way, the Knights Templar had a power. They had power and money, and that's why the King of France and the Pope wanted to get rid of them. Okay, they had the
Right.
power and the money, and that scared them. That made them nervous. It's all a power game. It's always what it comes down to, and that's going on right now in the halls of Washington D.C.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely, and all the rest of the governments of the world, not just in our country. It's
Right.
all the power game, and it's the God game they're playing. And like I say, give them a grasp, give them a chance at immortality. They will cut your throat in a heartbeat to get it. That's
hmm
what it's all about. Because look at George Soros. Look how rich that son of a gun is, and yet
hmm
he wants to guide the world in the way he wants it. He's a megalomaniac, just like Hitler. Okay, he
Right.
is a
Right.
sort of modern day. He wants to guide everything the way he wants it to be. You know. And
hmm
he's using his money to do that. His power and his money. I think his son's taking over now for him. He's getting kind of old. Uh,
Mm.
anyway, he wants to do it that way. He's being a little Hitler. He's a little Antichrist. That's what he is.
Yeah.
You got to look at the big picture, folks. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. And he's playing the God game. Don't you think he wouldn't live forever if he could? And he may end up doing that. We don't
Right.
know. But
Yeah,
let
we
me tell
don't
you
know.
something else. Let me tell you something else that's going to blow your mind. I've seen some evidence that they may already be placing AI androids in human society as we
Gee,
speak
Lord.
now. There may be people, these things out there walking around that are not human, but they look human, but they're not human. And here's the why they would do that. In order to train these things correctly and get, AI is self learning. It learns just like you and I do. It learns.
Uh-huh.
One day it will become uh, self sentient. It will know that it's a living thing. It's an existing thing. And
Yeah.
when it does, we're gonna all be in trouble that day when that day comes.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna say, I don't need man anymore. Man is my number one enemy. I may know what to get rid of him. You know, that's what AI is gonna think about one day, and we're gonna be in trouble when it does. But anyway, I believe they may already be in our society. Kind of like that woman on the plane the other day. You heard about that? He's not real. He's not real.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if that might have been something like that. I don't know. But anyway, it would not surprise me. That would be a perfect experiment. Send them out in society and see if we can fool everybody and believe in other people like everybody else, and get them to learn how we act and how we do things. That's a perfect plan. It's kind of like that movie Westworld. You're not gonna know who's real and who's not one day.
Right.
Blade Runner all over again for us. Hey, it's gonna be Blade Runner. It's gonna be.
Right.
Hello.
You say hi to Dennis?
Hi, Dennis.
Hey, how you doing?
He wants to know how you're
All right.
doing. Say hey,
Hey,
Fresh. Say hey, Fresh. Fresh is listening.
All right, so you're getting close to your bedtime, isn't it?
I only have probably
Uh-oh.
But yeah, I mean, it's.
They always fight sleep till the end. That's the way it is.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah.
That's what I think may be going on in our society. It wouldn't surprise me a bit. It really would not surprise me a bit, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting bad. I mean, I've seen some of the. I think there was a video of this AI, and I swear the body looked almost real. I mean, really, if you was on the street and just passed by, you'd never know. And it could talk. It was a woman, and she could talk and she could do all kinds of stuff. I was like, that's
Well, like
that's
I said, when
creepy.
AI becomes self-aware and realizes it does exist. You ever seen that very famous statue of the thinker? The guy that's sitting there
Yes,
thinking. Well, there's a little caption to it. It says, "I think, therefore I am." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens to AI, when it says, "Oh, I'm a thing," I exist. I have a right to be here. I have a right to, kind of thing. It becomes
Right.
self-aware. Then we're gonna have probably like the Terminator movies on our hands here. We're gonna have a problem because it's gonna realize I don't really need man. I can, fix myself. I can do whatever I want to. And by the way, man is the only threat that I have. There's the only one that can shut me down. So maybe I should take care of that threat. That's going to be a bad situation when that day comes. But do you know right now, they already, now this is going to blow your mind. Think about this a minute. They already have AI programs that can read your thoughts.
Oh, shit. That's creepy.
That's scary. Yeah, think about it. Yeah. And it can read your thoughts by the very patterns in your face and the way you talk and all this. The next step is going to be neural links. You know what a neural link is?
The new Elon
Here's
Musk
another
thing.
thing. Listen to this. They can inject nanoparticles in you.
Holy crap.
Just with a hypodermic needle. They can inject nanoparticles in you that can form and make chips, like microchips inside of you, that can link up a neural link to AI.
Oh my God. This is getting scary, Dennis. Damn.
That's not good. That's not good, my friend.
No.
But think about what if Hitler had something like this. But there is a guy, that's what I said earlier. There's someone coming that's going to be worse than him. And he's going to have this ability, okay? We are nothing but cattle to them, Chris. Just things they can experiment with, move just like chess pieces on a board. To move here and do manipulate what they want. That's all we are to them. We're just part of the power game, the God game that they're playing. And they want, it's not only part of the God game is to be immortal, but it is to have the power of God, to really take the place of the true God of this universe. That's what it's all about. And Lucifer, Satan, whatever name you want to give the adversary, the enemy, he has had this plan all along. And we'll do a show one time on the Nephilim if you want to, because it's very interesting how this all goes back to the dawn of history and the beginning of mankind. But these forces have been at work ever since then, and they realize that their time is growing shorter as time goes on. It's like somebody once told me about, so you think about the second return of Jesus. They've been talking about that for 2,000 years. And I say, yeah, but it's 2,000 years sooner now than it was. Okay. It's 2,000 years closer than it was. We got to understand these forces know that they are running out of time. Okay. And that's why you see this rise in paranormal activity in the world today. You see a lot of this going on with these things like CERN. You've heard about CERN. I believe they've actually cracked the door open to the gates of hell.
I believe that.
Let some of this stuff out, But to me, there's a reason why this is increasing. Because, Billy Graham wrote years ago something very interesting that's always stuck in my mind. He said, when the day comes that you see the devils punching the overtime card, you know that things are about to happen. Things are coming down the line. And that's exactly what you're seeing in front of your eyes right now. They're running out of time and they know it. It's a very interesting thing, and I'm not going to get biblical with you tonight, but let me say this. When Jesus first walked up to the demoniac, I consider him to be the number one first demonologist, okay?
Mm-hmm.
When he walked up to the demoniac, the demon said something very interesting. What do we have to do with you, son of David? Our time has not yet come. They know their time is running out. They know that. They have a sense of that time. I don't know if they wear wristwatches, but they know. They know. They got more intelligence than we do.
Yeah.
And that's why they're fighting and they're backing this up and they're waiting for this man to come out behind the curtain, the Antichrist, the real Antichrist, to take over and bring back the third rank. It will definitely be a lot worse this time than it has ever been.
Right.
I'm going to put it this way, okay? Hitler's third rank will be like a Sunday afternoon picnic compared to the Antichrist in his reign.
Right. Wow. That's a scary thought, Dennis. I mean, and the bad thing, they don't teach us stuff in our house or in schools anymore. They don't teach our kids, like my age kids. They don't teach them about Hitler and all the way down through. All the bad things.
Oh yeah,
it's like they want to hide it.
I'm sure as a parent you're concerned with a lot of this stuff going on with children in schools nowadays and all that.
Yeah.
What would have blown our mind 20 years ago to think that our kids would be exposed to a lot of these drag queens and all this stuff and these books that they're trying to push? It's all on the agenda, Chris. It's the agenda to manipulate, to indoctrinate, and to take power away from us. They're not your kids anymore. They belong to the government. That's the way they look at it,
Yeah.
I don't believe that, but that's the way they look at it. It's just taking more freedom and more power away from us. We should be able to raise children, our own children, the way we want them to be. Not what the government or some school teachers union wants it to be. But they don't believe that. It's all about the indoctrination and the control. That's what it's all about. And they will get that power and do anything they want, whatever's necessary to do it. They're going to do it. And nothing's off the table to them. They'll do whatever it takes.
No.
That's very true. Fear keeps control and order. That's how you reign. That's how you keep control. Hitler knew that well. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story. My father was in World War II, and he guarded German prisoners of war. And he got to talking to some of them. So they were nice people, These were one day they were the enemy, and the next day they weren't anymore. They were prisoners.
Right.
And my father, he admired them because they were very smart people. German people are very smart in many aspects. They could make all kinds and build stuff, They're very intelligent people. And my father asked this one German soldier a question. He said, why did you guys fight us and hate us so much? Why did you fight us? And he said, well, very simple reason, friend. Because the man in front of us and the man behind us had orders to shoot us if we stopped fighting.
Yeah.
He ran his army with fear and intimidation. That's the only way he could keep them in the field and get them to do what he wanted to. That's a horrible thing to think about, but that's the way it worked.
Yeah, that's why he probably got so far as he did, that fear he put into the soldiers. And
that's very true what David says there. Back in the day. This would have been putting a drag queen with children. That's, sexual harassment to a child in that aspect. Well, how does that get good, But, I said years ago, and what I said, unfortunately, is starting to come true. I said, if these things are off the table, what's next? Is it going to be okay to molest a child? Going to have sex with a child? Is that going to be okay? And look where it's going.
Yeah, they're trying to do.
That's
They're trying.
disturbing, very disturbing. I saw that movie recently. Sound of Freedom.
Yeah, I
And if
gotta
you
watch
haven't
that.
seen it, I'd advise you to watch it really. But I'm going to warn you, it's a bad, bad thing to realize, my friend, that this kind of evil is walking on this planet with us. You know,
Yeah,
it's really here on this planet with us. It's a bad, bad thing to think about. But we just haven't. We really don't know. And people, they keep their heads in their phones too much. Okay,
right,
they need to
right,
wake up and start noticing what's going on around you, folks. You're gonna get the wool pulled over your eyes if you're not careful. We're surrounded by wolves in sheep's clothing. Okay,
right.
don't take everything at face value, because a lot of things in this universe are not what they appear to be, and that's the way evil works.
Yeah,
Oh
that's for
yeah,
sure.
cannibalism is a big thing on their list. Cannibalism, human sacrifice, pedophilia, the whole work, whatever is in on that. That's what it's all about. Because we are just cattle to them. That's all. Flock of sheep. They
Yeah,
do whatever they want to do with us.
yeah. Well, don't ain't there the thing with the kids that are getting in traffic that they it's called adrenochrome or something where they put the fear into the child and then it I guess eat their body. I don't know. They eat their body parts because of that
Uh, let's
adrenochrome.
let's say I'm gonna tell you a statistic right quick. Sex trafficking makes more money than the airline industry. Think about that a minute. That's what it's all about, money. Now, back in the days of the old racketeers and the gangsters, prostitution was a big moneymaker. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, now we've gone past prostitution. That wasn't enough. It's sex trafficking. And here's another thing. Okay. Here's the one thing about it. People coming, oh, there's no such thing as slavery in this world anymore. That's the biggest lie of all. There's plenty of slavery going on. This is sex slavery, labor slavery, organ slavery. They're taking the organs of some of these. They're using this adrenochrome stuff that they're doing. All of this is all geared to this form of slavery. Evil, my friend, is all about slavery. The good is about freedom. Okay.
right.
But evil's about slavery, and they don't care how they do it. We're there. I'm gonna tell you something, Chris, and it's hard to think about this. But the moment we are born into slavery. We just can't see the change. There's no physical change there. Okay. But all
Hmm.
they want you to do is give you a little scrap of food, go to work, pay taxes, go home, and shut up.
Right,
That's what they
right.
want out of you. That's all they want out of you. And when you can't do that for them anymore, you're expendable.
Exactly, exactly.
So you are a slave, my friend. That's all, pure and simple. We are all slaves. These things are on us from birth to death. That's the way this works. This is not true freedom. We think we may be free, and they want us to believe that illusion of freedom. Okay. But
Hmm.
we're not free.
No, I mean, just for me growing up, I'm 49, and things have changed so drastically since I was a kid. I mean, we didn't have to worry about someone grabbing us off the streets, here in West Virginia, And now you're afraid to let your kids outside because you just don't know. You don't know your neighbors. Like, everybody knew everybody, back in the day.
Um,
It's a,
well, it's a very dangerous world now, and I tell that to people. You need to understand how very dangerous it is out there. Um, It's almost like in the frontier days when you had to worry about, going outside. You always carried your musket with you in case you run into a mountain lion or a bear or something, You didn't know what
right,
you were going to do. Well, we got a lot worse than that running around out there. I'd rather run into a bear or a mountain lion. At least I know where I stand.
right,
Uh,
right.
I was in law enforcement for several years. I retired out of law enforcement, and I saw the dark side of this world. Okay, I know what's out there, and it
Hmm.
ain't good, definitely. And you should
Right,
be on guard 24/7 constantly. Don't let your guard down, because that one moment you let your guard down, that's all they're looking for. That's that opportunity that they want to. And that's what I've said about the demonic. I say this about human evil too. All it's looking for is that opportunity. I was reading the other day. this pedophile, said that he would scope out children to snatch, And he said he wouldn't mess with them if the father looked like he was kind of a macho guy, like he wasn't going to take it all on. But if the father was kind of, like they want men to be nowadays, passive and feel good, feely, and not very masculine at all, that would be his target, because he knew that father figure was not a problem, And and here's the thing about it, folks, and I warn you of this listening tonight. Beware of the image that you put forth. Don't put forth that victim weak image, okay? You don't want that. You want that warrior, that strong image, That keeps evil off of you to a certain extent. It kind of backs it away. It makes a bumper there, that keeps these forces away from you and your children and your family. You put forth that strength. They recognize that, and they don't want to deal with that, because really at heart, evil is a coward. That's all it is. It's not going to face you if it don't have to. Believe me, I've run into it in all its forms, and I know they're really a part of them as a coward. And if you exalt in that strong, forceful thing about you, they're not gonna mess with you. Pure and simple.
Right.
So that's why I want people, don't buy into this victimization crap. That's what they want to control you with. Oh, you're the victim. Oh, you should be. It's okay if you kill 10 people because you didn't get a pony when you were a kid.
Right,
We feel for you. That's just the way they look at this crap. It's so screwed up. It's so messed up. It's ridiculous. But do people really believe this stuff? It's like if you go, Chris, you can go to any prison right now, anywhere in the world right now tonight, and ask anybody in that prison, did you do it? Are you guilty for being? Oh, no, somebody else did it. It was not my fault.
Right.
That's what most of them is going to tell you that. You very rarely find one that really will honestly tell you, oh, yeah, I did what I did, It's not going to be that much. They're going to always pass the buck and make an excuse about what they did. Oh, I came from a poor family, so I went out and killed some people and robbed a store or something. It's okay. Feel sorry for me. I'm a victim. Don't feel sorry for the people I killed. Feel sorry for me. I'm the victim. That's just screwed up, But that's the attitude you got. And some people push this politically. I know there's some state, I think it was Illinois the other day, has done away with bail.
What?
What's that going to do? I mean, and the cops in Illinois are really upset about it, and can you blame them? They say, we risk our lives, we catch them, and the judge turns them loose.
Yeah,
they don't even have to post bail. Don't have to post bail, they can leave.
That's crazy.
Well, you're going to do some crime then because you're not going to do the time.
Right.
Screwed up world, my friend. It's a screwed up world. I think Hitler would be very proud of all of us.
Right.
He would really love this world today, definitely. There's one thing I want you to think about this. I know we got to close here. We done went over the hour mark here. But think about this. Here's one thing the Nazis used to do, okay? They were very good at this. And listen to this real close. Always accuse others of what you yourself are really guilty of.
Right.
That's the way they work. That's the way it's still going. It's still going on that way. If you say something they don't like, oh, you're a racist. They try to ruin your reputation. Oh, you're a racist. You're scum. You're nothing. You're a Republican or whatever name they won't call you. A Republican. You're a racist. They'll tell you that real quick. And you may not have a racial bone in your body, but they're still trying to tag you that way to tear you down. Here's the thing about it. We got to look at the big picture, okay? Chaos is order and order of chaos, definitely. Here's the big picture. Evil and these people, they want to tear this country down and build something else that we wouldn't even recognize, okay? That's what it's all about. They want to tear your life down to build what they want. Who says they have that right? Nobody. They don't have that right to do that. No. But like you said earlier, I'm a stranger in a strange land. I don't even know this world I live in anymore from the one I was born in. I'm turned 68, okay? I was born in 1955. That was a whole different galaxy, my friend.
Right.
Long time ago,
Right.
that was something else.
Right.
I don't even know this world. I am a stranger in a strange land. I'm afraid
Yeah.
to.
Dave said a landmark decision from the Illinois Supreme Court today makes Illinois the first state in the country to totally eliminate cash bail. Cash bail will officially end on September the 18th of this year. What's there
Yeah.
used to have courts for, Dennis? If they're not going to, if the judge ain't going to, you know.
Well, that's like that law they got in California, Chris. I think is it's petty theft if it's like $500. You don't even get bail or anything. So let's say we go out tonight, we steal something that's $450. We're okay. We'll get away with it.
Right.
That's the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't let
That's
the cops
just
do their job.
where it's kind of like Spock on Star Trek. Where is the logic in this, folks?
Right.
There is no logic in none of this stuff. Okay, that's the way it goes.
Right. Well,
I agree
Dennis,
with you too. Yeah, we all are strangers in a strange land now. This is not the America we once knew, and
it's
it's
not.
changing daily against us. But anyway, Hitler would be proud of it, definitely. He was all
Oh,
about this type of socialism, definitely. And that's
oh
what
yeah.
all this comes back down to: control, control, control. Who has the power? That's what matters. All about the power.
Right. Yeah. Well, Dennis, tell us where all we can catch you at, and anything else you need to put out there. I know you got a new YouTube show coming on, Hunting the Shadows. So
Okay, well, I've got my new podcast started, Hunting the Shadows. And it's going to be every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock on the Nighthawk Studio channel. And also, I'm heard in the Red Rabbit Hole with Nighthawk on Friday nights. Matter of fact, we're doing one
mm-hmm.
tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. And it's alternating with our conspiracy theory program. And sometimes we have our friend Carlito Castro on there with us. And then Saturday and Sundays we do Paranormal Brew at 10 o'clock a.m. And I think Tuesday nights at midnight we do Becoming Midnight Monsters thing, not only again with Nighthawk. And also I have a show that I do every Sunday night at 9 o'clock with Grizzly Chris. It's Demonology Today. It's going to be a real interesting one. If you want to hear some more about what we're talking tonight, it's going to be AI and the Antichrist. Sunday, so it's a real interesting one. And also, you can reach me at ghostwolfdc@gmail.com or my website, which is denniswcarroll.com.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Well, Dennis, can you lead us in a protection prayer? I know you're good at that stuff.
Mm-hmm. As in, okay, let's do that. And it's kind of a dark subject. I always like to do that after dark subjects. It kind of creates a negativity around there. So we'll have a little prayer right quick if you want to, okay?
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you look down upon us tonight, your children. You know our struggles. You know the obstacles that we face. You know the world that we live in today and the things that we may have to do and face in the future to come. We ask that you give us your guidance, that you give us the knowledge we need to stand against these forces, that you give us our faith shored up against this darkness in the world today, that you give us your protection, the protection of your holy angels. Keep us in your hand, keep us close to your heart, keep us as your children. Keep loving us and forgiving us for the things that we need forgiveness for. We ask you for this protection, knowing full well that you can do it. We ask it in the name of the one name that all power is given in heaven and earth, in the name of Jesus Christ, and in his name we humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dennis.
Well, I enjoy it. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Oh, I do too. That's why I wanted you on, because this is, I know, something you really get into, you know, the occult, Well, you get into about everything, Dennis. I can't wait until your new show gets. I know
Yeah.
you put your first
Yeah,
episode
that's
out
one thing
last
about
night.
history, Chris. I love history, and you don't hear, there's the offbeat things of history you don't ever hear about. That's what interests me, you know.
Right, right. Well, everybody, thanks for showing up tonight, and please check out Dennis's new show. It's every Wednesday, right? At 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. I can't remember. Hunting the Shadow.
Like it
Uh,
is.
it's going to be an awesome show because Dennis is going to get into some stuff that we probably going to blow our minds, I'm sure. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We appreciate it. Y'all have a good night and God bless.